Hello, Mr. Montalvo, U.S. History. Today we are taking a look at Unit 3, Lesson 3, Day 3, taking a look at the journey of a new president, Thomas Jefferson. And our objective is to examine the events of the early nation, including the Louisiana Purchase and the Supreme Court decision in Marbury versus Madison. These concepts, these ideas really start to challenge the new Constitution. But in addition to that, it's in a way strengthens the new Constitution because it adds a little bit to that idea of the Constitution being a living document. For the seat or the spot for third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson and Adam Burr ran for the office. The vote was a deadlock or a tie, but when the Electoral College voted, Jefferson won the election. Now, you remember when we discussed previously the role of the Electoral College, while there is a popular vote, at the end of the day, the Electoral College vote is what matters when it comes to the election of a president. Under the Constitution, the House of Representatives decides the election in the case of a tie or a vote, making Thomas Jefferson the third president of the United States. Now, Jefferson wanted to lower taxes and cut federal spending. Jefferson believed in the idea of laissez-faire economics. Now, this all goes back to his belief or being an anti-federalist, the idea that government should play as little role as possible in the lives of people, but also in the economy. Now, laissez-faire is a French word meaning to be let alone. And according to laissez-faire government, the government should play as small of a role as possible in economic affairs. And this is pretty much summed up by a quote from Jefferson that we have below here. The merchants will manage commerce the better, the more they are let free to manage for themselves. Now, that idea that the government would have a hands-off approach and allow the economy or merchants or businesses to thrive. Now, we're going to see this political ideology, this economic ideology, take many different forms in our discussions throughout U.S. history. So this is a very important concept as we move forward, and a debate and an issue that comes up multiple times. So in Jefferson's term in government, this is what he did. So one, he decreased the size of government departments and cut the federal budget. He reduced the size of the Army and the Navy. In addition to that, he repealed the whiskey tax, so that very controversial excise tax, that whiskey tax that was placed during Washington's presidency. Now, in Marbury versus Madison, Supreme Court case in 1803, the Supreme Court announced for the first time the principle that a court may declare an act of Congress void if it is inconsistent with the Constitution. Now, you remember Article 3 of the Constitution discusses the powers of the Supreme Court. Now, since Marbury versus Madison, the Supreme Court has the final say, or is the final arbitrator of constitutionality of congressional legislation. This is known as judicial review. Now, let's break this down a little bit. What does that mean? So, congressional legislation. Yes, the legislative branch is in charge of creating laws, but it is within Marbury versus Madison that this idea of judicial review is born, in which the Supreme Court has a check on the legislative and, in a way, the executive branch. So that if a law is passed and the Supreme Court believes that that law is unconstitutional, that law then becomes void. Now, in 1795, President Washington signed the Picket Treaty with Spain. And in this treaty, it led to American ships being able to ship their goods in and out of New Orleans very peacefully. Now, New Orleans, geographically, is at the base of the Mississippi River. It's where the Mississippi River feeds out from. And as a result, because the Mississippi River is the largest river system in the United States, connecting to the Ohio River and so on, this played a very important role for America's expansion further west and to get goods out of the United States and into the world market. But New Orleans at the time belonged to France. So this agreement was extremely important for the United States economy and for the growth of the nation overall. Now, Thomas Jefferson wanted to make sure that Americans would continue to utilize the port of New Orleans soon after the French had taken possession of it. Now, the Napoleonic Wars is a whole separate issue, the topic that you'll discuss a lot when it comes to global studies. Long story short, France takes over Spain and as a result has possession of all of the former Spanish territories, New Orleans and the city, and Louisiana, the entire territory, being one of them. Now, fearing having powerful France as a neighbor for long, he tried to purchase New Orleans from Napoleon Bonaparte. We have to understand this geographically. Louisiana being almost the size, the territory itself being almost the size of the US, and Jefferson seeing what Napoleon is doing in Europe, taking over one country after another, he was trying to find a way to move the French out of the picture. As a result, Jefferson orders U.S. Minister Robert Livingston and future President James Monroe to negotiate the purchase of the colony. Now, he does this with the French minister, who immediately, once they arrive to France, refuses the offer. Fast forward a couple of years, Napoleon loses Haiti due to its own revolution, which caused him to be in search of money to pay soldiers and acquire weapons for his various wars. Now, Haiti was a very small colony, but it was a very productive colony, particularly in the sugar industry. And so losing Haiti would result in a massive loss of income for the French. So Napoleon sent his minister to offer the land called Louisiana. And so the French sold the land that would be known as the Louisiana Purchase for $15 million. Now, once again, remember, all Jefferson was looking for was control of New Orleans. As a result of the deal and the pressure that Napoleon is having back in Europe, he receives the entire area known as the Louisiana Purchase, as we can see here on the map below. Now, a major foreign policy success of Jefferson is his administration and successful completion of the Louisiana Purchase. Now, we're going to see, or rather, taking a look at the Louisiana Purchase. Jefferson uses the banking system put in place by Hamilton, his arch nemesis, in order to finance the purchase of the Louisiana Territory. So while this is seen as a success for Jefferson, it is, in the minds of many, particularly at the time, extremely hypocritical, because Jefferson lets everyone know how much against he is and how much against, in his mind, the banking system put in place by Hamilton is of the Constitution, being a very loose interpretation, the idea that we discussed previously, and his very strict view kind of counteracts this, because in no way, shape, or form does the Constitution describe the United States having the ability or power to purchase land and incorporate it into itself. So while this is an extreme success for Jefferson long term, he also goes in the books as being extremely hypocritical, utilizing the system that he criticized for his benefit. Now, attached to this lesson is an assignment taking a look at Jefferson's motivations for the Louisiana Purchase. That will be linked below. Please do take a look at it. Please do complete it. And then below, we have our exit ticket, or our kind of thoughts for today. Try to explain how Alexander Hamilton and the Federalists would consider Jefferson's purchase of Louisiana hypocritical. Yes, it was hypocritical, but how was it according to the differences between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists? And you can take a look at the previous lesson to better understand this concept or idea between the two. Now, that's all for today. Thank you for your time. Hope to see you soon.